Is there more to the book of Abraham that Joseph Smith knew about? Have scholars been getting this wrong? This guy might have the key. Welcome to the last dispensation. You're living in it. All right, brothers and sisters, I have had Ed Goble on before. Well, how long has it been, Ed? About a year?
Oh, it's been a year and a half.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Or a little bit more than that.
And we've talked about many different things. And we've talked about this topic. And you were what's going on? What am I talking about? I'm talking about the book of Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
But what you have been presenting to people like Jonathan Neville and other Heartlanders and people that, and this has nothing to do with the Book of Mormon. It has everything to do with the book of Abraham. And brothers and sisters, this is so controversial. Ed and I have talked about this for a couple years, a year and a half. But why is it controversial, Ed?
Well, it's because the papers that Joseph Smith put together with his scribes that are now published in the Joseph Smith Papers collections, or in the Joseph Smith Papers publications, I should say. These particular papers are blamed on W.W. Phelps, who was one of the scribes of Joseph Smith, and they allege that these are false translations.
Okay.
And
so
they try to do that to distance Joseph Smith from these papers.
So basically what you're saying is that W.W. Phelps, was he a counselor of Joseph Smith at the time?
He was one of the scribes in this group.
Okay.
Yeah, in this translation council, so to speak.
William Wines Phelps, often known as W.W. Phelps, was a significant figure in the early Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was appointed as the church's printer by revelation. By revelation, brothers and sisters. So W.W. Phelps is mentioned in the Doctrine and Covenants, and specifically section 57, and he played a very crucial role in publishing early church literature, including the Evening and Morning Star, the Upper Missouri Advertiser, the first edition of the Book of Commandments, the 1835 edition of the Doctrine and Covenants, and the first LDS hymnal, Sacred Hymns. And I think that was the book, the Book of Commandments. I already said that. Leadership, and basically, he was kind of, I'll tell you what fascinated me, and I'll let you get to what you're talking about. To put it simply, brothers and sisters, he could have very well been involved in a council like we have today, where the apostles and the general authorities counsel with others. And when you're in a council with them and they involve you, if the prophet involves you in things like Joseph Smith involved people in the revelatory process as far as translation was concerned in the Book of Mormon and in many other things. So there are scholars that basically think that W.W. Phelps went rogue. These were his revelations. And what you're saying is, we don't know that for sure. This could have been Joseph Smith working with W.W. Phelps in a council where revelation was with both men.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, the consensus among all scholars, except for a few Egyptologists that create, controversy and so forth about this, is that Joseph Smith is responsible for these papers. And, it's just kind of one of those things where it's like anything else that Joseph Smith produced with scribes. almost everything that he produced with scribes. So in this particular case, because there's controversy about the translations, like I say, they're trying to distance Joseph Smith from his own papers. These papers are key to understanding what's going on with the Book of Abraham translation process.
Now, what specific? So they're basically saying Joseph got it wrong.
Well, the people that are the critics say Joseph Smith got it wrong.
So I was wrong. It wasn't W.W. Phelps going.
The regular Egyptologists in the church are saying that they got the facsimiles stuff in the book of Abraham correct, but because they haven't been able to crack the system, the underlying system that's going on between the facsimiles and these other papers, that show the ancient context for all of this, they have believed that these translations are false. I mean, we're talking the critics and the Egyptologists in the church have believed that the translations in these papers are false. The reaction of the scholars in the church has been, like I say, to blame it on Phelps and these other scribes. The reaction outside of the church is just, oh, well, they believe that that Joseph Smith couldn't translate anyway, so It's not surprising to them. Does that make sense?
Yes. So you got scholars outside of the church that are blaming it on Joseph and saying, see, he got facsimiles and images wrong as far as Egyptian writing and hieroglyphics are concerned, right?
Yeah.
And inside the church, the scholars are like, no, let's just blame it on Phelps and say he got it wrong.
It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Oh, don't look at the guy behind that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly. And then I want to get to your bio in a minute. I'm sorry I want to get to your bio in a second. Mm-hmm. But I wanted people to understand what this is about. So, but what you're saying is these two men could have counseled together. Mm-hmm. You have the prophet presiding in this council. Yes. And there could have been others as well, right?
Yeah, there was a few others.
Okay. But he wouldn't be leaning on someone like Phelps if he didn't believe that Phelps had the ability to receive revelation. And Phelps was a scholar himself, was he not?
He was. Yeah, they were studying, ancient languages like Hebrew and so forth,
Right.
And, there was also a project that had to do with the Adamic language that's kind of really closely connected with all this, but that's too much information for now. We don't want to get into that. But the point is that, they were studying ancient languages, like Hebrew. So it was, there was this desire to bring forth this stuff and from these ancient sources. Yeah.
Before we get into what exactly the scholars in and outside the church thought he got wrong specifically, are we talking about that a little bit today?
Yeah, a little bit.
Before we do that, what is your background?
So my background is that I was closely involved with the creation of the Heartland theory. I did a book with Wayne May on the Heartland theory. That was actually the first book published on the Heartland theory, although, some of the ideas that we put together in that, were not original to us, but, putting it all together, some of the ideas were original to us. But anyway, bottom line, I was one of the creators of the Heartland theory as it is known now. And then I changed my mind on that. But it already had gotten started by the time I changed my mind. But
but I definitely want people to know you're not these bitter defectors from one geography stance to the other.
No. I'm on good speaking terms with Wayne May,
and Rod Meldrum, and Jonathan Neville is actually editing.
Yeah, he's actually helping on this book. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. And then your education background?
Yeah. I am just a self-taught kind of linguist, theologian type. I'm for my day job, I'm a senior software engineer, so I'm very analytical. So that's kind of my background, but there has been other people that have, studied the Book of Abraham with those same kind of credentials, so you can't,
Exactly.
it is what it is, you can't be an expert in everything, but
LDS scholars with Egyptology backgrounds like Carrie Molstein, John Gee, and Michael Rhodes have conducted research on the Book of Abraham. Diverse interpretations. LDS members, scholars, and leaders have adopted various interpretations of the Book of Abraham to reconcile its contents with modern Egyptological findings. This suggests that many church leaders engage with the text, and we know this, despite not having formal Egyptology training. Ongoing research. There is continued interest and research into the Book of Abraham within LDS circles with scholars, as mentioned by Carrie Molstein. Quote, "We are currently in a period of intensive research regarding the Book of Abraham. It seems that each month yields new and exciting information," close quote. Now, here's the question. Should this be limited to formal education of people that study an ancient land that's been known for its mysteriousness, not only because of its enormous pyramids and its great pharaohs, but also because of its mysteries that have never been solved, mysteries that challenge human understanding of this extraordinary culture? More than just historical mysteries, brothers and sisters, they are windows into the past. So remember this. Independent scholars can act as public intellectuals and change agents. This isn't something new. Advocating for important issues and doing what Ed Goble is doing, bringing attention to underrepresented areas of research. Okay, so what is it? What is what are the smoke? What's the smoking gun? What are we talking about here specifically that they said these men got wrong?
Yeah, so there's this roll of papyrus, right? It has facsimile 1 of the Book of Abraham on it. It has a bunch of other text characters in it. And, so like I say, that those text characters are key because they are they were removed from, or in other words, copied from the roll of papyrus onto these documents, and then they were translated. Okay. So like I say, that's like taking a piece of like a letter, right, from an Egyptian document, sticking it in a notebook, and then giving it a translation. So but these are like Egyptian glyphs, so they're a little bit different from our regular letters, right, that we're familiar with.
So that would be like, all right, for instance, Ed, when most people look at this, what's the thing that comes to their mind?
The giants.
The giants, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Not New York. Well, right. Maybe New York, but this is the letter N and the letter Y.
Yep.
So basically, brothers and sisters, what you're saying is that Joseph Smith took ancient lettering, or it could have been symbols, like almost like Japanese writing has symbols. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he said, this means giants.
Well, it was a representation that somebody attached to that.
An idea.
That's right. So it's an ideogram.
Okay. That makes sense. And what scholars today are just kind of dismissing it and going, no, he got it wrong. Or they're saying inside the church, they're saying Phelps got it wrong. Outside the church, they're saying Joe Smith. No, it meant the letter NY and it meant New York. Or it was just the letter N and the letter Y.
Yeah.
And Joseph's like, no, 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 it's got more meaning than that. You got to
Right.
understand. So
Yeah.
explain, give us an example of what he
Okay.
found.
Okay. Let me
Do you
try to
have any
share my
images?
screen. I do.
Sure, go ahead.
So you can see at the top that these are the regular kind of glyphs that you see on Egyptian temples and so forth and so on. You can see that every single one of these is a picture of something, but it's also a letter. Okay, each one of these either represents one consonant, two consonants, or three consonants. And the way these work is kind of like, imagine you've probably done those old games like in school that you did where you'd take like a picture and you'd try to spell something out with it. Like say the phrase be all that you can be. You take an
Yeah.
insect, right? A bee, and you say that stands for the English word be because it's like a likeness to it. It sound the representation is that it's like a bee, okay, all that you can be. So it's using these pictures as these representations of a syllable in a word, right? So each one of these would like spell out syllables in words. That's the usual way of using these, right? So you can see here we've got the same pictures. Each one of these in these cases are single consonants, single letters, right? So in this case, we've got the letter N, and it's a
Pasta.
it's like water. Okay, it's a glyph of water, and that's and so the reason that they use that for the letter their letter N is because that's the Egyptian noon, which means the waters of chaos, right? So the one that we're going to focus on right here is this symbol. This one
Is that a
uh,
feather?
no, it's actually a leaf. So
Oh, okay.
it's like a reed leaf. Like think of along the sides of rivers, right? Reed leaf.
Like Moses.
Sure.
What is the name of your book coming out, Ed?
It's right now the working title is Papyrus Puzzle Solving Confusion about Joseph Smith's Egyptian. So
Oh,
we
you're
might
working
play
on
with
it.
that. Yeah,
And when is this going to be coming out?
it's in a couple of months that it's coming out.
Okay.
Yeah. But this is 20 years in the making.
Yes. Okay.
So this is kind of just a teasers
All right.
for it. Each one of these is a cursive version of these pictures. Okay. Each one of these pictures is called a hieroglyphic. Okay. Each one of these pictures is called a hieratic. And a hieratic is
So
a
did the hieratics come later?
Yeah. No, actually they appeared almost at the same time period that the hieroglyphic appeared.
Okay.
It's just that they're easier to write, and they're called hieratic because the Greeks, attached that name to it, meaning like the priestly version of the glyphs, right? So they would carve these on their temples and so forth, and these ones were like easier to like write, excuse
So
me.
the Greeks had this language too, then.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were definitely some Greeks in the ancient world that knew Egyptian, sure,
Yeah.
especially in the Ptolemaic or
Well, yeah, Alexander the Great
Greco-Roman. Yeah,
was very familiar with Egypt. He would come a lot, and
right. And in in Alexandria, in Egypt, which is named after him, when the Ptolemies started ruling Egypt after Alexander the Great, they built the Library of Alexandria, and that's likely how the Book of Abraham got into Egypt, was through this library system that they had. So they would have, the Library of Alexandria, they'd copy books from all over the world, and then they'd distribute those to the temple libraries all over Egypt. So they didn't just have their own writings, they had religious writings from all over the world. So you've got this mix, though, because these Ptolemies were Greeks and they took over Egypt, right? I'm sorry, Alexander took over Egypt. The Ptolemies were like the people that came after him, because
Okay.
one of them was one of his generals, so that they were the basically like Cleopatra. She was, one of the Ptolemies, basically, or she
Okay.
was from that line. So anyway, the point is we have these kind of glyphs here that were the hieratic. These are the versions that were in the text for this papyrus that's associated with the Book of Abraham. Okay, so so these are the versions that normally, when you think of our own text in English, we call it running text because when it goes from one sound to the other, right, all of these letters represent sounds. So the same thing with regular Egyptian, you've got all this running text where the sounds are represented by these things, right? So the way that they were used in these papers that Joseph Smith produced with the scribes is different from this running text. But it's actually exactly the same as they're used in the facsimiles of the Book of Abraham, in terms of, since these are pictures, right? The Book of
Right.
Abraham facsimiles have pictures, and Joseph Smith would give them numbers, and then he would, so that people would know which one he's referring to, and then he would attach an explanation to that, right?
Ah, okay.
So each one of these is a picture. You can see that, and he's just attaching an explanation to it. But the difference is that he would use them one by one in these papers. They're called the Kirtland Egyptian Papers, is a common name for them. But like I say, they're published in the Joseph Smith Papers collections or books, and so Joseph Smith would take each one of these hieratic versions and he would attach an explanation to it. So again, we're going to focus on this one right here, this reed.
Okay.
Okay. So first I need to define a term. Okay. This term is actually one that's used by these Egyptologists at BYU a lot. It's called iconotropy, which means image turning. So if you can think of those images in the Book of Abraham facsimiles, like the round one, right? The one in the middle stands for Kolob, but it's actually not Kolob. It's actually a picture of an Egyptian god. He's the Egyptian god of creation. Okay. It's just that Kolob has an association with this. So Joseph Smith is attaching this meaning of Kolob to this picture, but he was not the one that did it first. It was these people in the ancient world, in ancient Egypt, that would take these meaning assignments, like say, excuse me, like say Kolob, right? And they would attach them to pictures that had, so the pictures have this kind of generic meaning in Egyptian, and then these people would attach other meanings to them that are kind of thematically associated with them.
Okay, all right. So do you have the image that was attached to the Kolob?
Well, I do, but that's a different part of the book. That's not the one that I was going to focus on, because this one's pretty easy. This one's a lot easier to explain. So here's another version of the hieratic of this, reed symbol. So as you can see, this is what we're talking about right here. This is one version.
Okay.
And this is another one. But this is actually as it was transcribed in the papers that we're talking about that Joseph Smith produced with his scribes. Here's the picture version of this, and it's actually turned, to face the other direction. So these Egyptian texts, in the case of regular hieroglyphic, they could be read either direction. It just kind of depends on the point, the way that they're pointing, right? So this one, there's this list of Egyptian characters called Gardner's sign list, and so anybody that wants to look this one up, it's M17. Now let's get to what Joseph Smith interpreted this as. So he gave it the name Chalcedoniash or Chalcedoniash. Okay. And the second name that he gave it was Zakionhiash. Okay. What this is in the actual meaning of it that he attached to it is land of the Chaldees. Okay. And so he's associating it with the book of Abraham, chapter 1, where it talks about Abraham being from the land of the Chaldees. Okay. Which means the area of southern Iraq or Babylonia. Okay. The ancient name for that in scholarly terms, in the scholars that have documented this, the ancient name for this area is Karduniash. Okay, that's just another way to pronounce this, Chalcedoniash. So Karduniash and Chalcedoniash are the same word. They're just pronounced differently.
Okay.
Okay. Zakioniash is just a version of the old Iranian name for the place, Sakan. Okay. The Hebrew word for that is Kasdim, which means Chaldees. Okay. But the actual place as we know it in archaeology is Sumer. In the Bible, it was called Shinar, which is a version of the word Sumer. Okay. The name of the place, here we go. Okay. The actual name of the place that the Sumerians called their own land, okay, is the land of reeds.
Interesting.
Kiangi means land of reeds. You can see why they chose why they chose this to
so
represent.
that was their gang sign.
Yeah, it's kind of like having it on their flag or something.
Yeah, right.
And
like
a good,
like the Giants.
yeah. And so
symbol.
this in the text for this papyrus that's associated with the book of Abraham, this is the very first symbol from that. It flaked off, but we know that it was the very first symbol because it's recorded in these papers that show that it was originally the first symbol in the text. Okay, but here it's not being used textually. It's being used as a picture. It's being used as this picture, although this is a more cursive version, like I say.
But the other meaning for it is what?
The other meaning is that it's the letter I.
It's the letter I.
It's the letter I.
Just like the N and Y means giants. And
that's right.
If 2,000 years ago they went, nope, or 4,000 years they were like, no, that was N and Y. It meant New York. Well, I know.
That's
but
right.
It also meant the football team, the Giants.
That's right. So these things in these papers are just being used as pictures, except the reason it was so confusing to everybody for so long is because, for one reason, is because most of the time when they use things as pictures, they don't use the cursive versions of them. They use, these picture versions of them.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go right ahead.
Now, do we have proof anywhere that this reef or reed, sorry, that's a leaf, right?
Yes, it's a
Do we have
leaf.
any proof anywhere that this leaf was used to mean?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
When did that come out? Way later?
Well, what do you mean come out? I mean, it's documented. I've got it.
No, I mean during the time of Joseph Smith, nobody knew that.
No, they wouldn't. No, unless there was some really obscure something in some book somewhere.
Okay, so he was specifically saying that meant land of reeds. When did they find out that he was right?
When I found out he was right, or when
you found it. So you are the one that discovered.
Yes.
That you have proof.
Yes.
That Joseph was right.
Yes, and this is my discovery, but this works exactly the same as what Hugh Nibley and Michael Rhodes discovered for the facsimiles. So Hugh Nibley and Michael Rhodes reverse engineered those pictures in the facsimiles to figure out how all this works. This is the exact same system, except it's with these symbols. So this is following the precedent or methodology that Hugh Nibley and Michael Rhodes established. So
So
this
Hugh
is
Nibley was on your side.
well, Hugh Nibley was not on my side in life. I don't know what his position is now on the other side,
No, I
but
don't mean in life. I mean,
right. Well, no, he was actually the one that started the demonization of these papers to start blaming them on Phelps. That was actually Hugh Nibley that started that, unfortunately.
oh, okay.
But
Hugh
and
Nibley was just a man and didn't always get everything right.
yeah, yeah. What I'm saying here is that what they did for the facsimiles, okay, that they've only ever had their focus on the facsimiles. Those pictures in the facsimiles. They've never had their focus on this. See what I'm saying? So this is simply me approaching it the same way to show this. Okay, so why is this so? It's because, like I say, Sumer is land of reeds because it's a description of the area, because it's that delta with the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, and there's a bunch of reeds around this river delta. See, so it's like a common thing. What is that similar to? Well, it's similar to this.
Amen.
Just north of us there. So what is the defining characteristic of Canada?
If
Right.
somebody said, "What does this mean to you?" I'd say Canada.
Yeah.
I
And
wouldn't
so,
say maple leaf.
yeah. So what is defining about Canada? Well, a lot of their industry is based off of maple syrup and so forth, right? So that is the reason why this idea of, an icon or a logo or whatever you want to call it, based off of characters, common characters, okay, can be reused. They're iconotropically used differently from the typical, like just using them as a letter, right? Because they're also a picture. It's fundamentally also something that the way Egyptian works anyway, because it's just a bunch of pictures. All of these symbols that the Egyptian language is based off of. And what is the principle? Well, it's just like in Doctrine and Covenants 128, right? It's saying that there is a likeness between this and that, right? We've got the ordinance of baptism by water to immerse therein in order to answer to the likeness of the dead, right? That one principle might accord with the other. So you got this literal thing and you got this symbol that has a likeness to it, right?
Right.
And so in this case, we got baptism where it's in the likeness of going into the grave, right? Going under the water. Coming out of the water is the likeness of the resurrection, right? And the same thing with the the baptismal fonts in temples. They're put down low underneath sometimes in the temple, right? That's the essential symbolism there, because there's a likeness between this and that, right? So this gets a lot more complicated with the usage of some of these symbols, but this is one of the fundamental ones that's the easiest in terms of showing how this works, right?
Right.
So this is just, all of them have a similar kind of fundamental way that they work, and this is how they work. So this is the reason why a lot of people are leaving the church over the Book of Abraham, because of this misunderstanding about how these symbols work. And so this book is going to address that. It's going to shore up where,
Interesting.
in the defense of the church, we call it apologetics. My opinion is that the Book of Abraham Apologetics has failed because it has tried to pass these things off on W. W. Phelps instead of just actually going in and figuring out what's going on. This is one of the quotations. This is in the non-Semitic ideographic documents, the equivalent of Sumer is Kengi or Kiengi, which seems to be a combination of Ken, meaning land, and Gi, meaning reed, i.e. land of reeds, an appropriate designation for Babylonia. I think I have a typo right there. Which is essentially a district of reedy marshes formed by the Tigris and Euphrates. So if you look at so that's the 1911 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Okay.
These are the Sumerian symbols that are also linked with the Egyptian. So if you look down here, these are the Sumerian symbols. So the word Ken, Ki, earth, Sumerian cuneiform for Gi, reed. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So corresponding to the Egyptian reed symbol. See.
So Joseph
Another
was
version
right.
of the name. Yeah.
So there were many other different images that he translated too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's everything documented in the book. So, yeah. So, I mean, you can see the linguistics of it is all documented here. And
this is awesome. This is amazing.
I've got multiple, quotes like here, firstly, the issue, or let's see, is this yeah. But so
what do the scholars inside the church say about this? They've just never taken a look at it?
Well, I tried to talk to Kerry Muhlstein about it.
What does he say about
he didn't go through it in detail or something. I don't know, but
about the leaf.
Well, he didn't accept it.
What did Jonathan Neville say about it? Sorry.
Well, Jonathan really likes the idea. He really likes all the idea that so far that I've presented to him.
Did you show him? Did he look at this, the leaf?
Well, I showed him other examples.
Oh, okay. But where Joseph got it right.
Yeah, yeah, and so it's all documented. It's all. Well, here's several quotes for this. From PhD linguists. Okay. All I can do is kind of, present what I have and let the chips fall where they may.
This is great. And, so what would this say about Phelps and Joseph? It would say, well, what was so important for Joseph to show these things? What was he trying to...
This is, so for example, with the Book of Mormon, he was able to only show some glyphs from the Reformed Egyptian, for example, like on the Anthon manuscript, right? That was taken to Charles Anthon, but he was never able to show anybody anything and anything else. That's about all they were able to see. Just only the witnesses were able to see the plates. Right. Nobody was able to go through the plates in detail and figure out, how all the Egyptian works, right, and the plates and everything. Right. This was something where Joseph Smith was saying, not only with the facsimiles, but with this, he was saying, okay, here's a proof of concept. I'm not, it's like he was probably saying something like in his mind, like, I'm not showing like an exhaustive thing here, but here's some samples of how this works. In our day, we can come back and say, okay, look, he was actually, look at the underlying system here. This is not a system of running text Egyptian. This is a system of just using Egyptian characters as, ideograms and having this ancient association made between this and that,
right.
So this is, like I say, it's similar to the usage of the facsimiles. Now, whether there was ever a papyrus in the hands of Joseph Smith that actually had the text of the Book of Abraham on it, that's a different question. That is not, because this particular papyrus has these symbols that are being used as pictures to go along with the Book of Abraham. They are not this other papyrus that like actually has the text on it of the actual Book of Abraham, right, in some ancient language. So what I believe on that is that that was something in the Library of Alexandria and these other temple libraries that were available to these priests. So that just kind of means that, whether you're one of the individuals that believes in what's called the missing papyrus theory, that Joseph Smith had something that we no longer have that shows that text, this is neither here nor there for that, because that's fine if he did. Okay, we're just talking about pictures that go along with the Book of Abraham. These characters that are are also pictures, because that's their essential identity, is that they're pictures. See, that's the way Egyptian works. And
Well,
so,
plus it
yeah,
shows that he was a prophet of God.
yeah,
That's
absolutely.
the main thing, is that you're
Yeah,
showing that, and that he could have worked in councils like our leaders do today,
yeah,
where it's not just one man,
yeah. And
and
now, yeah, go ahead.
Phelps could have had revelation too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. See, that's the way councils work. That's like, I was in, as a clerk in a stake presidency, and I saw how revelation worked, and it didn't matter who it came from. What matters was, whether the priesthood holder that has the keys, you know is I mean, because the buck stops with that person. He's the one that has the keys of the priesthood. So now that this is coming out, a new consensus can start to form around the fact that Joseph Smith is responsible for these papers too. So we don't have to do this kind of act anymore in the apologetics, where we're saying, oh, no, 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 it's the scribes, because we can't figure out how these translate, right? It's now we know how they translate. um, Now all we have to do is continue to do all the reverse engineering for each glyph, right? I mean, there's only a certain amount that I was able to do, because that I'm just one person. But now we can go back and say, okay, this is how this works. So now we don't have to evade evidence anymore on this issue. We can just say it how it is. Joseph Smith was responsible for these papers with Phelps, and now we understand how, the key ways that these things actually do translate, right? So
Right.
now there's this mystery. We don't have to have people, I mean, this shores up the defense of the Book of Abraham, because now, people were saying, okay, well, this doesn't translate, so they should have been attributing these papers to Joseph Smith from the beginning. They should have been reverse engineering, coming to, just like they did with the facsimiles. They should have been reverse engineering the relationships here and from the beginning, instead of just saying, oh, we can't figure it out. Okay, so this is like the guy in the Wizard of Oz, the wizard saying, no, don't look behind that curtain. We can open up that curtain, you know, there it is. There's no more reason to worry about, because now we can defend this stuff.
Right. Exactly. And
Mhm.
this is why scholarship, and I love the scholars in the church, but they get clicky. And the
Mhm.
clickiness will be like, I'm not allowed to look at that. It reminds me, did you ever see the uh oh my goodness, the end of was it Lord of the Rings? Am I thinking of the trolls, where they, no matter what, they would try, the people would try to get them to see the light, and they're like, no, no, we're trolls, we can't. And I can't remember what
Yeah, I think
series
I
I'm
get it.
thinking of. And it's like, no, we can't do that. We're not allowed to look at that because it's not in our narrative. It's not in our my scope, and I could lose my job. Really? That's what we're coming to? That's the gospel of Jesus Christ? Joseph Smith, I guarantee you, if he was with you guys at BYU, would be like, really? You guys are not going to look at something because doesn't fit the narrative of what gives you tenure. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's why I go with neo scholarship outside of that realm, because what do we have to lose? Nothing. We're looking for truth, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else, Brother Ed?
There's a lot more, but that's the basic idea.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Troy.
Oh, wait. Your
Oh,
book
yeah?
will be out in a couple months, and
Yep.
and we don't have a name for it yet. But brothers and sisters, go ahead.
It's probably going to be Papyrus Puzzle, Solving Confusion About the Book of Abraham, or it might be Solving Confusion About Joseph Smith's Egyptian. It'll be one of those. Yeah.
I'm excited because I didn't understand this very much before, and you and I would talk about it. And I remember the place you were in, and I said, here's what's Ryan's last name?
Nelson.
I remember the place you were in, and I said, here's Ryan Nelson. And he's the guy that does the firm conference with Rod. And then you met up with Jonathan Neville. And I'm so thankful that you sprouted your wings and it's going.
Yeah, me too. Well, here's the thing is the Heartlanders, even though, it was a group that I was away from for a long time, even though I still have, issues that, theologically that I don't agree with, there are people that I can work with. There's a big difference between people that I can work with and people that I can't.
Right. Yeah. Shame on these people that wouldn't look at that. And even after they had proof that Joseph was right.
But if you have an agenda-based defense of something, and that's become kind of this thing in this, what's the word, like, this kind of establishment or something like that has that as a gospel truth when it's not the gospel.
Hey, exactly. And it's not the apostles.
Yeah.
It's not the general authorities, even though I think they need to do a better job but here's why. They know, even if they know, they're not here to stifle, is that the right word? Free thinking and education. So we believe in agency, and we believe that these scholars have their agency to even click up if they want to and believe a certain way, but it's damaging only as much as we allow it personally. That's why you have to gain a testimony of the gospel. But it hasn't been the leaders of the church. It's been worldly education that has caused most of the cognitive dissonances and the faith crises in people.
Well, yeah. Even though, a lot of the good defenses for the church come out of these groups that are part of this establishment, there's still a lot of important things that come out, from these other groups like the Heartlanders. Even though some people may not agree with everything, I'm hoping for a lot of more collaboration with Heartlanders over time, where maybe I can bring some balance to some of that, following Jonathan's multiple working hypotheses theory, or I don't know what you would call that. But like, you're presenting more than one side of it in a presentation. You're saying, like, okay, maybe you're teaming up with somebody and you're saying, like, here's this take on it and that take on it, or something, and then so
all right, thank you so much, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. Good to be with you, Troy.
Mm-hmm.